Hey everybody, this is our Friday morning update, and we're really excited to have Craig and Debbie Borgard with us. They are missionaries in Germany, and for a lot of us, this may be the first time that you've met them. We've been praying for them, we've supported them for over 20 years, and so we're excited they're a part of our extended family. And so, like we've been doing on these updates, we've been asking our missionaries to share with us their salvation experience, their call to the field. We'll talk a little bit about how the mission has worked, especially with COVID right now. And because of Debbie's health, I want to get a little bit of an update on that. So without further ado, here are the Borgards. And Craig and Debbie, you guys decide who's going to talk first, but this is just an open forum, so you guys can just go for it.
Okay. Well, when I was growing up, I went to church with my parents. It was a church that was more preaching the social gospel. And so I never really heard the true gospel. I learned Bible verses and that type of thing. And I always thought myself, as I was growing up, I was always one that tried to help people and was a good person and whatnot. And sure, I knew God and He was there and whatnot. But it wasn't until we got married and we met friends and they started talking to us about the gospel, and we realized that they were talking a little bit different than what we had grown up with. That I realized that, and they were talking about a different relationship than what I had with the Lord. And so they invited us to a campground, a Christian campground, and we were going there. We had a trailer. We went down there, and so they had a outside service every Sunday. So we started going to the church service again with them, and it was the first time I heard about my sin. But even though I was a good person, I was still a sinner and a Savior. And so the more I prayed about it, the more I thought about it. My life was not going the way I wanted. I was trying to do things for myself and only for myself. And if somebody needed help, I'd go help them and go give them a hand. But truly, it was when I heard the gospel that Jesus Christ died for my sins, that I'm not a good person without saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And I turned my life over. I'll let Debbie tell her story too, but we both came to know the Lord within about a month of each other. We were 32 years old, so we didn't grow up in Christian homes. We grew up in atheistic type homes, and so we went to himself.
I was always curious. I was just always on the search for truth, and I asked questions about everything. And in college, I was taking courses in philosophy and psychology and political science, and I was just always curious about what is truth. And it was 10 years after college when we were at this campground, and I was asking questions after service one day, and as soon as this person would answer the question, I'd have another question. And I just kept throwing out these questions. And finally, she said to me, "You're trying to understand, you need to just believe." And at that moment, I was convicted that Jesus is the truth, the Bible is the truth. And like my life turned around at that point, and I had direction. And it's only been years, as I've been longer in the faith, I've come to see the sin. The longer I'm in the faith, the more I see my sin. And I know that He has saved me out of that. And, when in our home church, we were looking for, we had changed churches and we were looking for a place to serve. And my idea was the library, but there were no openings. And every Sunday they were announcing, we need somebody to work in missions in the church. And we let them announce it for like 2 months and we never moved on it. And finally we said, we don't see any other place here. Let's say we'll help in missions. And we talked to the pastor and formed the missions committee, and we were convicted about trying to raise mission awareness in the church. And what the Lord did was raise our awareness for missions.
Yeah.
And we started visiting missionaries. And finally, one challenged us in Germany to, no, that was a radiologist,
Yeah.
challenged he challenged everybody in the church at a missions conference, one time in your life, go on a missions trip. It'll change your life. So the missionary from Germany kept inviting us to come. And so finally we visited him. And when we were here, he showed us a church in Leipzig that needed renovating. And he wanted us to bring a team back. So we prayed about it and talked about it and looked around the city. And before we left from that trip, we told him, okay, we'll do it. We'll bring a team back. So we get on the plane and we look at each other and we say, what did we just tell him we would do? How do we do this? We've never organized a team. Or how do you convince people to take their vacation and take their own money and go over to Germany and work for 2 weeks? And but we had all the pictures we needed and we put together a presentation. And we ended up having 22 people come.
Wow.
And the team was really a great experience. And I think at the end of that team,
then the next year we brought another team to the same church to help. And it was during that time in the second team that the Lord called us and told us, this is where you're to be full time. And so we talked to the elders of that church and the leaders. And they said, if you want to come back and work through the church, in the church, around the church, we'll support you here in Leipzig. So a clear calling. The Lord was
Awesome.
Confirming that he was calling us to Germany. And since the first team, we've now had over 40 teams come to Europe and work in Europe. We've taken teams to Germany. We've taken them to Slovakia. We've taken teams to Hungary. We've taken teams to Romania. And we've taken teams to Moldova. Currently, we still have teams. I mean, this year we had a team scheduled, but it had to be canceled because of the virus. But we're currently focusing on Romania and supporting a work that's going on there amongst the gypsies. And so the teams come there and preach the gospel and hand out food and help wherever they can and preach the gospel and walk through to people.
what's good about the work in Romania is that often these things turn into humanitarian efforts. Sure. And the gospel gets lost. But the man we work with there is he's a really good Christian and he has so much wisdom. And the gospel is given at every event, whether there's food or children's program or whatever the activity is. But there's always a gospel presentation first. And the emphasis is that.
And he'll say, well, we're just going to this village today to preach the gospel. We're not bringing any humanitarian help because they've had it. I don't want them to feel that every time I come, they're holding their hands up. They want the gospel is the most important thing. And so we just go and preach the gospel. We do adult programs. We do children's programs. We've had 300 kids sitting around outside, standing outside in the cold, listening to the gospel. Just looking to hear the gospel. So it's an open work, and we've been going there since about 2007 in supporting this work. So we often take Americans and Germans, and we meet in Romania. And so it's a mixed, the three cultures, and it works. The Lord just brings us all together for the proclamation of the gospel.
So when you're when you guys take teams to other parts of the world, is there a connection that happened in Germany, or like how do you hear about the other spots that you're doing these trips outside of Germany?
Through the churches here, we hear about a church in Hungary, for instance, and then we've taken maybe 10 teams to Hungary to help build a Bible school there. And also we've done outreaches into schools. What's neat is that we've had opportunities because we're a native English speaker, and we go to the schools and ask them if they'd like us, a native group to come in and speak to their students.
Hmm.
And we've done that in almost every country and had great success with it. In Hungary, we had, after the third or fourth year we went there, we started inviting them back to the school. And so we had 35 kids and seven teachers come. We had dinner, we had a gospel presentation at school and everything for them. And, so it's been a neat opportunity. We can use our native tongue to make contacts for the people we're going to help.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
It's been an open door. In Romania, we can use either English or German. There's people there to translate both. So when you go into the villages, it's translated into Romanian. It's been fun. We've met a lot of great people. We've seen people that have come on short-term teams going to full-time ministry.
Wow.
So it's just been an open door we didn't plan on when we came,
right?
But the Lord opened the door, and over 40 teams, the Lord's just blessed it, abundantly.
So right now, your home base is in what city in Germany?
It's in Halle, which is in the east.
Mm-hmm.
It's where Handel was born.
Hmm.
It's about 35 miles from Leipzig.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is a little bit bigger. We're about 2 hours south of Berlin.
Okay.
So Bach was born in Leipzig, and Handel was born in Halle.
Yep.
They lived at the same time, never met.
Yeah.
We're in Luther country. We're in Luther country because Wittenberg is an hour and 45 minutes.
Hour and 15 minutes away.
Hour and 15 minutes. Eisleben is 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Eisenach, where the Wartburg is.
Yeah.
It's about an hour and a half.
But being in Luther country, the state we're in, if you draw a triangle around, using Halle as one of the corners, to the Harz Mountains up to Magdeburg, which is the capital of the state. If you draw a triangle in this area, there's less than 0.5% born-again Christians. Now, there are people who call themselves Christians. There are people who go to church, but they're not born again.
They call them paper Christians because they were baptized.
Yeah.
The gospel is needed here. You go up to somebody and talk to them, and why are you here? I'm a missionary bringing the gospel. Well, we're a Christian country. Go to Africa. So you got, I'm a Bible teacher, that type of thing. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think socialism, especially during World War II, made that mindset that it's they try to tie in the nationalism with and they try to smokescreen the prejudice, and then all of a sudden they call themselves a Christian nation, but it's really just it was about the state, and that was their God for such a long time, and it's sad. Yeah, I mean that's a very rough area. Are you okay? So the church, is there a specific church that you guys planted in that town, or are there a few churches that you work with in that area?
I didn't hear you. Broke up a little bit.
Yeah, I think we got a little bad connection.
Your question broke up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Is there one
Yes.
church that you're working with in that town, or are there several churches?
There are several churches. We planted a new, we call it Bible Church Halle.
Okay.
We planted it because so many of these churches are going liberal.
Yeah.
And they're not sticking to the word. I mean, we've heard things like, we believe in Jesus, but we don't believe in the Bible.
That's common.
That's common here.
Yeah.
So the Lord just wasn't our idea to plant another church, because we planted one in Schkeuditz, but the Lord laid it on our hearts with us and two other people, and we just decided to plant a new church. It's about 5.5, 6 years old. We have 16, 17 members. We've got maybe anywhere from 20 to 35 people on a Sunday. People travel every other week from Torgau, which is an 1.5-hour drive, just to come to the church because they can't find a good church between here and there.
Wow.
The churches have gone so liberal. We were always in the Brethren Church here in Germany because when we came, the missionary before us told us that they are the closest to the Bible. So, and we found them that way in the beginning. And we were in the church in Leipzig, and then we planted the one in Schkeuditz with a team, and then we came to Halle, and we were helping a Brethren church here. But we were there about 5 years, I guess, and it got extremely liberal. And we had worked with the pastor from the what's that big name?
The
Evangelical Free Church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was missions minded, and we were on the same page with him, but doctrinally they were getting rid of their doctrine, and they were going very liberal. So when we wanted to come out of the Brethren Church, there was literally no other church to go to hear the word preached.
So we're associated with churches. There's a couple churches in Berlin we're associated with, and there's a church in Mainz, which is near Braunschweig, where Volkswagen is centered.
Yeah.
It's a good Bible church, and so we're a daughter church of that one up there. It's about 1 hour and 45 minutes.
So Debbie, let's talk a little bit about how are you feeling? How is that experience with COVID? Being in the hospital, like how is it right now? How you doing?
I'm doing I'm really satisfied, more than satisfied. I'm so thankful. I have stiffness. I don't have full range of motion with my head, but I'm not taking anything for pain. I don't really have a lot of pain. If I do too much, I have to rest my back, but my voice is not as strong as it used to be.
She had 6 operations, and 5 operations in 2 months, and 1 operation about 5 months earlier. It was the 5 operations were during the COVID period, and which no visitors allowed in or out. But because we've got a good relationship with some of the people on the board of the hospital, one of the men came to Debbie and said, "Where's your husband?" "Well, he can't get in the hospital." He says, "You have him call me, I'll get him in."
The last time I was in for 3 weeks, Craig got to spend the last week with me there.
Nice.
Which was unreal. So God was just so unbelievably good, because when I had to go back in, the wound was not healing after the last surgery, and I had to go back in, and it was right during the when the pandemic was like high gear here.
Yeah.
And we were already in quarantine, and that was the last thing I wanted to do, but I was sitting in the emergency room for about 4 or 5 hours, or 4 hours maybe, and Craig was waiting outside in the cold. He couldn't come in, and I was getting really annoyed because the wound was open, and finally we were texting back and forth, and Craig said, "You need to have patience." I think that's what she said. And the Lord just convicted me. Yeah, you need to have patience. It's not about you. And so I got taken in that night for 3 weeks, and I knew then that there were no visitors allowed, and that was, to me, that was like going to be the worst possible thing. But those first 2 weeks alone, the Lord gave me so many opportunities to talk to people. Patients, I had 3 different roommates, and the doctors and the nurses and physical therapists, everybody, like there were just opportunities to have conversation. So I mean, I can actually say it was a blessed time when I thought it was going to be the worst possible. And then when Craig got to come the last we're praying. Everything is over now. If everything stays in place. I have more hardware than hardware.
Your hardware store.
Yeah.
True Value hardware store down the street.
So we're just praying the screws and the rods and everything stay in place. And
Yeah. So no jumping jacks. Just keep it, stay on the
Yeah.
ground. Full feet on the ground.
they
for a
said no
while.
jogging. I said, don't worry.
Yeah. So how are things going on in Germany right now?
But
as far as the
COVID, in Halle, it's starting to pick up again a little bit, but we've been having services since the beginning of May or middle of May.
Okay.
Middle of May. We have services inside. We still have to have social distancing, but the room is big enough that with 30, 35 people, we can manage inside the room. We have our English Bible study we have a family that came from Guatemala.
Yeah.
And came to Leipzig and then found this church and moved to Halle for the church. And so we have an English Bible study with them. They're German. They're learning the German and aren't getting much out of the Sunday sermon. But yeah, it's pretty much normal. You go on the streets and you don't see anybody wearing masks. They have to. It's mandatory when you go into a store or when you ride the trolley on the streetcar or in a train. You have to have masks on. But
We were down to was it 10 cases?
less than that.
Less than 10 cases in the city. And then when school was finished, not everybody, but a lot of people went on vacation. And now every week there's more and more cases as they come back. But I think we're up to like 30 some cases now.
Yeah.
And they have a good protocol, and I think they're